5 Republicans want to scupper Kevin McCarthy's campaign to be the next Speaker of the House, with a possible 6th member joining the fray. The 5 are Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, Representative Matt Rosendale of Montana, Representative Ralph Norman of South Carolina, Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, and Representative Bob Good of Virginia. Matt Gaetz has been implicated in a sex trafficking probe that, while it has not yet produced any charges against him, this could change. Representative Matt Rosendale is starting only his 2nd term and may still need directions to the men's room. Representative Bob Good is also starting only his 2nd term, so his credentials for governance are, well, shall we say, lacking. Representative Ralph Norman is starting his 4th term, but hasn't really done much to distinguish himself. And Representative Andy Biggs is also starting his 4th term and hasn't done much to get off the back bench. A possible 6th member of this conservative wrecking crew is Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado. While she is also only starting her 2nd term, she has done plenty to raise her profile as a member of Congress and did it so well that her annex almost cost her seat in Congress. The 5 men, none of whom have more than 6 years on the job, want anyone but conservative Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. Miss Boebert wants to be able to fire the boss at any time for her to vote for McCarthy. McCarthy's been in Congress for 16 years and is shown to be a capable leader of the opposition in that time. This amalgamation of tyros and backbenchers feel that they have the credentials to choose who the next speaker will be simply because they are all Trump fanboys, which hardly gives them the cred to make such a decision. In fact, the only other thing they all have in common is they all voted to make it harder to gather evidence against pedophiles. Their effort at that was a miserable failure, which is probably of great concern to Mr. Gaetz. In their pitiful attempt to seize power for themselves, they have instantly made enemies of 15 Republican representatives who won election or re-election in districts that were carried by Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Some are newly elected, while others are starting their 2nd term, and a couple are seasoned legislators. There's Michael Lawler, freshman from New York, Young Kim of California, who's starting her 2nd term. Michelle Steele, also from California, also starting her 2nd term. David Valadao of California, starting his 5th term. Don Bacon of Nebraska, a 4th termer, now starting 5. Mike Garcia, another California, entering his 3rd term. David Schweikert of Arizona, the most experienced of the group, who's starting his 7th term in office. Anthony D'Esposito is a freshman from New York. Juan Ciscomani is a 1st termer from Arizona. John Duarte, a California pistachio farmer who just earned his 1st term. Tom Keene, who won New Jersey's 7th district seat for the 1st time. Lori Chavez de Reamer, who was sent to Congress for the 1st time by the voters of Oregon's 5th district. Marcos Molinaro, newly minted congressman from New York's 19th district, and freshman Representative Jen Kiggins of Virginia and Nick LaLota of New York, both of whom are veterans of the U.S. Navy. While their mostly lack of time in Congress may make them seem as upstarts to the far right wing of their party, they are no more punching above their weight than the 5 Never McCarthy Club members, and they have numbers on their side. If these 15 were to decide to vote against any legislation put forth by the anti-McCarthy 5, that legislation would be dead on arrival to the House floor. Those 5 also blame Mr. McCarthy for the failure of a red tide sweeping into the House. What they fail to recognize is that McCarthy did all he could to make that happen, when all the while the person who did the most to keep that from happening was actually the wannabe dictator they all fawn over, Donald Trump. They may succeed at keeping Kevin McCarthy from wielding the Speaker's gavel, but assuredly will not get someone as conservative as they would like, seeing as there are no avowed fascists in Congress. What they may well end up with is a very moderate Republican that the Democrats feel that they can have a working relationship with, which is an attribute that doesn't describe anyone who would be to their liking. These self-righteous Trumpophiles lack the political acumen to realize that deal-making is how Congress is supposed to work. Deals are negotiated by members who respect each other and are cognizant that in crafting good legislation, neither side gets everything they want. That ramrodding legislation down people's throats simply brings about a swing in the House makeup every 2 to 4 years, with reform legislation undoing what was forcibly done by the last Congress, only to have new reform legislation crammed down the throats of now minority party. The fact that senators, probably from both parties, are in silent and sometimes not so silent agreement with Mitch McConnell's statement that the Senate needs to save the House Republicans from having to try and govern ought to be a clear indicator to those recalcitrants they will end up on the wrong side of history. That is, if their inflated egos even allow them to care.